This podcast is about the density lab, and in watching it, I've assumed that you've already read the procedure. So if not, then pause the podcast and reread the procedure and follow the pre-lab instructions, and then come back to this podcast. Just to review, there are two key points, and your results depend on your ability to use the equipment properly, and that will help you identify your unknown, which is one of the goals of the lab. So accurate results are important, as well as just ensuring that the lab is clean and ready to go for the next group. So that's what this podcast is about. So in order to get great results and help you identify your unknown, there's three things that I've outlined here, and I'm going to go through some details. If you're watching this on your iPhone, the print might be a little small, so hopefully you can listen a little bit more carefully if that is the case for you. So first thing is using the equipment properly, and that is part of the purpose of the first activity that we did in lab last time, which was using the graduated cylinders with the appropriate technique. But we haven't used the balance, but I think you've used those in previous classes. So first of all, make sure your balance is clean and dry, of course, and don't use the tear button. I don't know if you used that in biology last year or in previous science classes, but there's a reason for that, in that we are massing an object, and that object is going to be in a beaker most of the time, so you want to avoid, or a graduated cylinder, so you want to avoid using the tear button. The next piece of equipment to work carefully with and record is using volume. And if you had difficulty in the safe lab techniques recording volume accurately, you might want to check in either with the instructor or with a lab partner to be sure that you are following the technique appropriately. And be careful. You're adding, in the case of water displacement, you're adding a solid to water and displacing this solid. So be careful, it doesn't splash. You lose water, that'll affect your results. Also, think ahead. If your solid volume is very large, will you overflow the graduated cylinder? Think ahead. The second thing is make sure you use the right precision when you're using the graduated cylinder, the balance in today's lab, or when you're measuring the length of the object with a ruler. Make sure that you have one uncertain digit and that your estimation of that last digit includes a 0 if it is indeed exactly a 0. And then finally, the important thing with these measurements is to make sure that your sample size is not too small. Don't simply use one small piece of the irregular solid. I've given you a large sample. Use that sample in its entirety so that your sample size is large enough, and that will ensure that your percent error is not exaggerated. So, keeping order in the lab. This is new for you, but think about the cafe at the end of the day. If everybody keeps their table clean, if everybody was responsible for their table, then the cafe would be clean at the end of the day. That's kind of the same thing in this lab, but it's even more important as the year goes on when we're working with equipment that is and materials that are unsafe, and we want to have everything clean. So that's what this slide is all about. You'll have an index card in your tub. You put your names on it and the mods so that in the next class I know who left their station nice and tidy. That's my way of keeping track. Make sure that when you're finished with lab, that second point here is that everything that was in the tub goes back in the tub before you leave. Again, it's just a matter of cleaning up. The third thing that I wanted to call to your attention is that there are different funnels in your tub. There are funnels that have a narrow stem, and there are funnels that have a wide stem. They are for different purposes. Make sure that you use the appropriate funnel for the particular unknown. Narrow stem for the liquid, wide stem for the solid. Now, the fourth point is a tricky one, and it requires cooperation on your part. So reread that measuring volume of the irregular solid for a minute. You might want to pause this podcast. Okay, so you've reread the procedure, and so you finished by water displacement measuring the volume of your irregular solid. You need to get most of the water away from the solid using paper towels, pouring off the liquid and then drying the solid as best as you can without losing solid as best as you can. And then you're going to place that slightly damp solid in the evaporating dish and walk it to the back of the room. You'll place that evaporating dish in the oven. Notice that the dish has a letter that corresponds to your unknown letter. Please be consistent here. So, now the evaporating dish that was in your tub is now in the drying oven. So, and the plastic cup that contained your unknown is empty. So that plastic cup needs to be brought back and placed in front of the oven, and you're going to obtain a new sample of the solid and a new plastic cup and a new evaporating dish, and return those back to your tub, and these will all be dry for the next class. And finally, make sure that you replace any liquid if the liquid sample is running low. As you can see, that's a lot of attention to detail in 4 short mods. So be sure that you pace yourself in this process for labs so that you're able to work safely and calmly with accuracy and care for the next group. All right, so don't forget to share your results on the student share folder and include your initials, as I've shown you how to do here, your first and last name, and then a slash, and then your partner's first and last initials. And be sure and save that. Just click the save button. Don't go save as. Just click save and then reopen it. If there's 2 people working on it at the same time, sometimes only one set of data uploads. So open it up again and double check to make sure that your data has been uploaded. It might take a couple trials, so be patient. And then finally, the other activity that you need to do during lab is to observe and record your salt, sand, and iron samples. So there's a scissors in your tub. You'll be cutting that top off, the zip portion, so you can mask that easily. But before you do that, compare your sample with others in the room. What is the appearance? Are some of the samples wet? Or are they dry? Do they look like they're fairly pure? Assess that. And where I want you to record this information is found in your packet, Separation of a Mixture Part 2. So bring that over to the lab area with you tomorrow when you do the experiment so that you can have that ready to record. What we're going to use in this case is some weighing paper, and the easiest way to do that is to fold it in half and then fold it in half again so that the paper has folds in the quarter and there's a X kind of in the center of the weighing paper. Unfold it and then pour your you can tear out this weighing paper. That's no problem there. You can tear for the solid samples of salt, sand, and iron. And then pour your dry solid sample on top of the weighing paper and then record the mass of each of your 3 solid samples and then dispose of it. Have a successful lab.